And how did your personal journey influence the way you approach leadership development?
So I think a turning point for me, to be honest with you, was the pandemic.
So what kind of leaders do you love working with the most?
Scientists, engineers, IT folks fit in that category.
What habit has had the biggest impact on your life?
Having a morning devotional.
Welcome to I'm Up, He Sees Me, I'm Down. Conversations on leadership, faith, and resilience with Mike Turner. This show is proudly sponsored by Alamo Tech and Mission Solution Partners.
Welcome back to I'm Up, He Sees Me, I'm Down. Today I'm joined by Carylynn Larson, a leadership coach and organizational development professional who helps leaders and teams unlock their potential through intentional leadership and personal growth. But what really stood out to me about Carylynn's story is the journey behind the leadership. From being part of a military family to navigating serious physical challenges and discovering how community and faith shape the way we lead others. Carylynn, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. I love the show, and I'm so glad to be here.
We've had a couple conversations, and it's just an amazing story. So I can't emphasize enough how excited I am to have you on this podcast and have you be able to tell your story. So before we jump into anything really, I want to start with your early life and journey. So let's start with your story. Tell us a little about where you grew up and what shaped you early in life.
Yeah, I love asking that question to others too. So I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, in the southern United States, with very Yankee parents. So we were transplants into the southern culture. Yeah. So my dad was from the Seattle area. My mom was from Buffalo. My dad got a faculty appointment at the University of Alabama, Birmingham Medical School. He was a behavioral neurobiologist, so super brilliant, and super talented in many ways, and had super high expectations for my brother and I as well. Right. So, we lived a really classic middle class kind of life. And, I remember certainly, always trying to get A's in school, always trying to kind of push it and stand out and be good at things. I never really felt like I was very good at almost anything until maybe I started running towards the end of middle school. And I just, for one, loved running. It was such an outlet for me. And I talk a lot about these days about the power of community. The running community was also just fantastic. Our team in middle school and then high school, and even the Birmingham track club community, even the adults that I met through that community were just really beautiful, encouraging people. And it was so inspirational to be part of that. And so for a long time, I had this identity, or my identity became that of a runner. And I ran collegiately. And then my senior year in college, started to run marathons and really excelled in the marathon space as well. And by excelled, I don't mean I was going to the Olympic trials, but for an average Joe who didn't feel very good at anything, doing pretty well was really very rewarding for me.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You competed at state level, I take it, and stuff like that. Yeah. So you were competitive enough to say, I got to, I'm gonna get up every morning. I'm gonna get on my run, get my routine going. Things that most people wouldn't even fathom in their mind that they want to go through on a rigor, right?
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
So I'll tell you, since podcasts are great for storytelling, and I don't tell this story very often, especially in public settings. The pinnacle perhaps of my running career was before the Marine Corps Marathon got as big as it is today, back when it was truly the people's marathon and was purely lottery with no professional elite runners.
Right.
And it was limited to 10,000 people. I got in through a lottery ticket, and I think it was the first time I was running the marathon, maybe the second. At any rate, I I got towards within the last 5 miles, and people started to cheer like over the top for me. And I was like, what is wrong with you people, right? Like, it's not that exciting to see me. It turns out I got 5th in my age group and 20th woman overall in the marathon that year. So that's why they were so excited to see like a woman in the field, I guess.
Yeah.
So that was
I
the
love that about
pinnacle
you
of my
because,
running career.
no, and I love that about you because that's the humility in you. And I'm like, you actually did really well as a runner. And it's just really cool to see you tell the story and it's, but that's amazing. That really is amazing, Carolyn. So this is a great emotional bridge. So I want to talk a little bit about military because I think, you brought up the Marine Corps marathon, which is I'm just a big fan of that. And I could never have made that. I was always, I ran, because I had to run because they told me to run. And if I got honestly 23-minute run times in 3 miles, I was like over the moon. And they were like, Mike, you just barely made it. There you go, Sergeant. I got you checked off on the 3-mile run, but you need to do better. But anyways, so you mentioned being a military spouse and being part of that community for almost 20 years. So what has that experience been like for you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's been really, really eye-opening. Growing up, I think my community was very much sort of academic with my dad being at the university, and
Right.
I didn't know a lot of people who served. I had a friend whose dad was in the National Guard, and that's probably as close as I got to it. And so then moving up to the DC area, actually my first exposure to the military was doing research to support leader adaptability post 9/11 in grad school. And then shortly thereafter, I met my husband. He was Coast Guard at the time.
Right.
So I really appreciated just how committed he was. He served at 9/11, post 9/11 as well. And then he ended up after going out of the Coast Guard, getting recruited back into the Navy, and has done many tours to Afghanistan, other places around the world. And yeah, it's really just opened my eyes to the commitment of certainly military members, veterans, and family members. It's really hard to have your spouse or a partner sent off for an extended period of time. It's really hard when there's very little opportunity to connect or talk at all, right? It just feels very isolating. And probably the hardest deployment for us was during the pandemic. My husband got deployed.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah. And our son was like at that age where he still was supposed to be doing school, but he was like 6.
Yeah.
So attention span on Zoom school, that was going to work.
Yeah.
And I'm a working mom. So it was just really, really tough. And we were so blessed to have friends and family just absolutely come around us and support us. So for all the folks that are out there listening that are either military or military family or know someone who is, I just want to say thank you for your support.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. They were, the community aspect, just amazing. I don't know if you've never been part of the military, been part of, and I can speak of the Navy and I can speak of the Marine Corps because I've been in both, and just the tight community around. And I think it's a lot to do with you have to build that bridge and that community together. It really has to come together because otherwise, like you said, your spouse is off serving, they're overseas, they're on a float, whatever the case is, it's tough. So there's a strong sense of community in military families. How has that influenced your philosophy around leadership?
Yeah, great question. When I first started doing leadership work, I would say I wasn't actually all that focused on community. It wasn't a key word for me. Emotional intelligence was, social intelligence, adaptability, all those things. But I didn't see at that time just how much those close connections and real conversations and that ability to be open and honest and just having someone that you could literally say anything to and that they would still love you and they wouldn't judge you for it. They would give you grace and comfort and connection. just how much that builds these other things that we try to build when we try to support leaders in the field. If you are feeling isolated, alone, if you're feeling stereotyped or stigmatized, it's really difficult to demonstrate good leadership. It's almost like those are just weights that are pulling you down.
Absolutely. And and so you shared something earlier in our conversations, and we're gonna get to this, and it's a chronic pain that you had to contend with. And I think this really segues well into the community, because I think in a lot of ways, I mean, your community was so strong to get you through this. So let's talk first about, obviously you've gone through some surgeries and stuff. So let's first talk about the first surgery that you've had to go through and the chronic pain you had to deal with in that journey first. So walk us through that journey, and I'll have some follow-ups.
Yeah, absolutely. So the journey almost started immediately when I started running. I always experienced really bad hip pain, and no one really knew where it was coming from. And so it was diagnosed as symptoms, really, but not root cause, right? I was diagnosed as having IT band syndrome. Like, well, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Why is that happening?
Yeah.
And it was, to some extent, I was taught that pain is mental, and, that we could just endure through it. And I think there is an element too of when you're with people that you love to spend time with, you want to continue to spend time with them, and you don't want to do something that would take you away from them. And my community was the running community. So I didn't want to stop running because I would lose that community.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of pushed through it. And again, it was just chronic. When I was a junior in college, my hip was so inflamed that I had a surgery covered by the Athletic Association, right, to actually go in and lengthen my IT band, still kind of treating symptoms, which is, I don't want to be critical of modern medicine, but oftentimes we just don't know what the root cause is. And so all we can do is treat the symptoms.
Right.
And then when I was 30, basically, right, leading up to my 30th birthday, I just got really sick and tired of being in so much pain all the time. And once again, not running was not an option on my radar. Like that wasn't the one that occurred to me. But I doubled down and committed to figuring out what was going on. I had a labral tear. I went into surgery for a labral tear, and it was discovered that actually I was born with hip dysplasia. So then I had this total out with God too, Craig, because I was like, I'm a runner, right? Like, how can I be created to not have hip joints? Like, you made me be a runner.
Yeah.
So there was definitely like an intersection with my faith journey too, because I was just so frustrated by it. But I ended up having a massive surgery to have my pelvis reconstructed to try to create hip structure, instead of having, a double hip replacement when you're 30. And then there's all sorts of issues with that. So yeah, it took me a year to get back on my feet again. It was a really intense surgery, long hospital stay. I know I shared with you my absolute respect for folks that navigate the world in wheelchairs, because I had to do that for a long time, and it was awful.
Yeah. And
so
your
hard.
mental capabilities to get through that. I mean, I couldn't imagine you having you're up to these, the third, fourth surgery at this point. And then you're like, got this long journey in a wheelchair that you're going to have to contend with. Now, granted, there's a silver lining or, light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing, that you're like, okay, there's something here, but I got to go through this. Like that going through that, I really just admire you for that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
So what did that year of recovery teach you about resilience?
Oh my goodness. So much. For one, it taught me that I actually didn't have to run or work out. And as you know, we haven't touched on this yet, but as you know, part of my story is also very much mental health crisis story. Yeah. So between the end of my college career and basically my 30s, I struggled really severely with an eating disorder. And part of my eating disorder was running too.
Right.
So I really had learned how to cope with stress up until college through running. And you know, we celebrate that in society.
Right.
And I'm not necessarily saying there's anything wrong with exercising to reduce stress, but if
Right.
you have no other coping skills, you might take it a little too far. So,
And that could be said really of anything. Like there's an extreme to everything. Extreme eating, extreme. You know, there's shows on all this.
absolutely, yes. As my brilliant husband loves to say, anything in excess is a poison, right? So
Yes,
even
absolutely.
too much exercise or running. So I would just run and run and run and run to manage kind of the emotional labor of daily life and the stresses of being a young adult in Washington, D.C. and a young professional. And then the food part came in too. So I was also just completely messed up in terms of wanting to restrict, but then binge eating and just kind of a
Right.
really volatile pattern back and forth. And I'm pretty convinced that my ability to disassociate from the pain in my hip also helped just to disassociate with the pain of like basically self-starvation, right?
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
just,
Hunger. Yeah.
I could just kind of cut right between my head and the rest of my body really well. Didn't
Yeah.
have to feel anything the neck down. So that part of going through that surgery, to get back to your original question, I obviously could not run. I could not walk. I couldn't do
Yeah.
anything for a
Yeah.
long time. And I had thought for many, many years that I would literally just die if I couldn't move my body. And here I was, right? Like
Yep.
in bed for months.
Yeah.
So
Can't
that
do
broke
anything.
me of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you had to go through that journey because what was to come was even more intense. So talk me about the next surgery that you've recently just happened, right? So,
Yeah, I wouldn't call it more intense though, but you're
okay.
right. When we
Well,
first connected, I was like, I just got a total hip replacement.
yeah.
So that's right though. That big surgery, the pelvic reconstruction, it bought me almost 20 years, which is
Mhm.
great. And then I finally was able to convince my orthopedics to give me a hip replacement because I was still living in chronic pain at some
Yeah.
point. So I am now in the recovery from that and
Yeah.
back in that place where, you know, going for a dog walk feels like a really intense activity for me. And I'm certainly not getting my heart rate up anytime soon. And the
Yeah.
beauty now versus in my 20s is that now that's fine with me. And I'm
Right.
not having a panic attack over not being able to exercise in a 24-hour period.
So, yeah. And so let's talk about the mental health and disassociation because you touched on that a little bit. And I want to double down on that a little bit. So how did you begin to reconnect with your body in a healthy way?
Well, that's such a great question. The short answer is with lots of therapy, but
Yeah.
also with lots of great coaching.
Right.
And I believe that there's so much value in having people sit with you and guide you through exercises that you just wouldn't do on your own. Number one, you wouldn't do them because you might not be aware of them. Number two, you might not do them because they're uncomfortable. And so you stop the second that discomfort comes.
Yes.
Being in, whether it be like one-on-one with a therapist, or actually the best is in peer settings, again,
Okay.
community,
Yeah.
being with people who are also on a journey that is at least in parallel to yours and doing these hard things together. I have a sticker over there that I picked up at a health fair the other day that I was tabling at. It says, I can do hard things. And I wish it said, we can do hard things,
Yes.
because together we can do way harder things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of it is mindfulness, actually, mindfulness practices, starting to notice when your heart rate goes up, starting to notice when you get fidgety, or in my case, shaky. So I would often not feel hungry, but I could notice that I'd start to get shaky, right?
Yes.
And so
Like a blood sugar level type situation.
exactly. So
Yeah.
even though my hunger cues were not realigned, they weren't
Right.
activated yet, if I started to pay attention to those like blood sugar cues,
Right.
then I could use that as a proxy for hunger cues. And the same goes on the binge eating side, the overeating side.
Yes.
If I could start to notice that I didn't necessarily, I would still feel hungry, because hunger is interesting. Hunger is a mix of somatic cues, like your stomach feels full. You can
Yeah.
feel your stomach filling up, but hunger is also emotional. And we know that. So
Yeah.
I would still feel hungry because I was trying to fill myself up
Right.
emotionally, but I had to start to learn how to pay attention to the somatic cues, the body cues.
Oh yeah. That's a lot of people tend to write that off. They just, blood sugar levels and stuff like that. Unless you have an actual issue with your blood sugars, your diabetes or something like that, a lot of us just go, oh, I need to get a Coke or something. They don't even think about it. It's really interesting too. And I say this, but your body is an amazing, amazing instrument. Like, it's an amazing system. Like, the fact that it's going to tell you through your taste buds what it needs to supply itself is amazing. And it will do that. It'll tell you, I need sugar, and it'll want you to go get something sugary to help, or whatever the case is, right? Or you're low on iron. It's going to be like, man, a steak would be really good right now. Very juicy steak. Go get me a juicy steak. Like, it just blows my mind sometimes when you think about how amazing the body is. So
It's absolutely true. And then the part of the difficulty of an eating disorder is that it unwires some of that, right?
yes,
It tells you that
right.
the steak is terrifying to you, and then the
Yes,
terror takes away, or it contradicts what your body is saying in terms of, I need iron. So yeah,
right.
I need
Exactly.
iron, but I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I'm not going to go get that steak to get the iron. And yeah, you just start, again, disassociating. You start breaking away from it. Exactly what happens. So you also talked about faith playing an important role in your life. So, but in a very open and inclusive way. So how would you describe your faith journey today?
Such a great question. So yeah, and part of growing up, it goes back to I guess, my origin story. So I grew up again in the Christian South,
Right.
and back when I was growing up in the 70s, early 80s, and I don't know how much different it is today. Perhaps it's changed a bit. I haven't lived there in many decades, but it was almost unacceptable not to go to church.
Right.
Everybody just went to church. And when I say church, I basically went to a Christian church.
Right.
Um, and my understanding from the stories that my mom has told me is that my dad refused to go to church in Birmingham because they went when they first moved there and were so stunned by the hypocrisy, by things that people would say and be welcoming to them, but then be very blatantly, as an example, racist to other
Right.
members of the community.
Yeah.
And so he just refused to be part of that. So we didn't go to church as a family. But
Right.
I had neighbors that took me to church. So I still sort of had this connection with the Christian faith at Methodist church, little
Hmm.
Methodist church. And then in college, I was really blessed to have some friends who had a much deeper faith. It wasn't just going to church.
Right.
They were like deeply deeply affected, I would say, by the story of Jesus and what Jesus stands for, and his love for humanity, and what God means to them. And that was
Right.
very different than me just going to church and kind
Right.
of getting the storytelling of Noah's Ark. So that, and I was a spectator to that, I would say, but I was a
Okay.
very curious spectator to it.
Right.
And then when I moved to Washington, D.C., once again, like, folks that were believers would sort of talk to me and help me like plug in and kind of explore this faith journey. So, and what I really appreciated about all of those people is that they weren't trying to insist that I believe what they believe. None of them did.
Right.
They just were willing to be open and courageous and honest and share what they believed, and then let me think about what I wanted to believe. And eventually, I absolutely chose to believe that God is love and grace and light, and that He loves me and created me and all of those things.
Right.
And in everything that I do, I try to be extremely appreciative that there are many different names for God around the world, right?
Right.
That
Yeah.
like there is no religion that owns God. Like that's
Right.
not a thing.
Right. Yeah. Not a single
And
religion that has, has the monopoly on it. So
exactly, yeah.
yeah.
Like religion is a human construct.
Yes,
Right? Religion
absolutely.
is something that we've built around this and then
Right.
often used to actually do horrible things in the world.
Yes.
And so, yeah, part of my story also is founding this nonprofit. I know you and I have talked about this, that supports the journey to freedom from disordered eating for all sorts of people. And one of the things that we tried to be intentional about is just communicating that it's a safe place for people to explore faith
Yes.
in their recovery. But we are not trying to push our
Right.
there isn't an R, there's not a corporate our faith, right? Like
Right.
you just have a
Right.
whole bunch of people who have their individual faith journeys
Right.
and want to make it safe for other people to explore what that could be for them. And
And
so
I love that. That's why I was really leading in with that question, because I wanted that openness that your mindset about religion and faith. It just really it resonated with me, and I'm sure it's going to resonate with a lot of the audience too. It's like, yeah, that's how kind of I walk it right now. It's like, and that's how my path is. I'm like, hey, here's my path. I'm trying to walk in the path of Jesus Christ. That's how I'm going, and that's my path, and you're welcome to walk beside me in your own path of that same journey. And so that's how I put it together. So how does faith influence how you lead and serve others? So obviously it's a big part of it. So how does that really kind of come together?
yeah. So I mean, one thing is to always try to make it safe for people to show up exactly how they are, to not try to put criteria on people in terms of how they'd have to show up to be loved or accepted exactly how they are. So for me, that's a big piece of it, is loving people exactly how they are.
Where they are, how they are. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
And creating, I think a big piece of it too is trying to create access to resources for folks that wouldn't otherwise have them.
Right.
That was a big part of founding the nonprofit that I founded. It's just increasing access, both because the economic marketplace doesn't really support a lot of what people would need to actually recover from an eating disorder. It supports, maybe your insurance covers seeing a therapist, but most people's insurance is really minimal when it comes to tapping into meal support or again, these safe type of groups that are therapist led and yet community oriented peer groups. And so creating access to those, but also making sure that finances aren't a barrier to that.
Right.
And what I love about it, it's hard to operate as a nonprofit. There's nothing fun about fundraising.
Yeah.
My least favorite thing to do. And at the same time, it also allows us to do the very important work of helping people understand what it's like for someone to be really struggling with something like an eating disorder.
Right. No,
that's the work.
That is, yeah. And that's where the trenches are. That's where you're doing the best work. So you work with leaders and organizations now. And how did your personal journey influence the way you approach leadership development?
Yeah. So I think a turning point for me, to be honest with you, was the pandemic, because I'm embarrassed to say that pre-pandemic, I'm not sure my personal journey influenced the way I do my corporate leadership work all that much. It's influenced me as a person. And so, of course, that's going to come across in some ways, but it was very indirect.
Right.
During the pandemic, what I saw as I supported the organizations that I was working with at the time, and also just created open forums for people to come together and share, I saw people who would previously never had said aloud that they were struggling in the mental health kind of arena,
Right.
be quite open about that.
Yeah.
And I also saw leaders acknowledging a lot of very difficult conversations they were having with people who were struggling with anxiety and depression and isolation and panic attacks and OCD and sort of all manifestations.
The whole gamut of it. Everybody's systems were shocked or were jarred, let's say, during the pandemic.
Yeah. So that was a real turning point for me. And one could say that it should have been right in front of my face all along. But what it compelled me to do was take this work I was doing in the nonprofit, like really being an advocate and a spokesperson and a leader in the mental health domain, and then doing corporate executive coaching and corporate leadership work, and look for ways to bring them together.
Right.
So, as you know, one of the ways that I do that now is by speaking to corporations about how to help people be healing community to one another, how to help people show up when others are in need. So it's interesting because I'm not really speaking directly to the people who are suffering.
Right.
In any given audience, there's lots of people who are suffering. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But I'm not speaking to them directly, not like a provider would.
Right.
I'm speaking to everyone in that audience about how to show up for their neighbor when they see that they're struggling.
You're speaking to the people that think of themselves as bystanders.
Exactly. And we are all bystanders, and we all suffer too.
Yes.
And that's an interesting intersection too, because there is nothing quite like showing up for another person to help you feel better about yourself. So in serving and in showing up for other people, we're also improving our own mental health and well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's the old adage of the best thing you can do is give someone a gift, because it makes you feel so much better. Like it reciprocates in such a different way and carries such a longer term. And I'm speaking to the person that's a little more selfish and might say, I want lots of gifts. I was like, just try giving a gift of anything, service, of a gift, an actual material gift, whatever, and just see how that makes you feel. And it really shift your mindset. So, So what kind of leaders do you love working with the most?
I have rarely met a leader I didn't love working with, but I do think I'm influenced a little bit by my upbringing, and I'm really drawn to folks that are sort of academically minded, scientists, engineers, IT folks fit in that category.
Right.
Finance people often fit in that category, where they're super structured in their thinking.
Right.
And because I can relate to that, I can be the most task-oriented person in the world, which given that most people are paying me to help them on the soft side of leadership, right, is pretty funny. But I think part of the reason I can do it really well is that I get what it's like to just put your head down and do the research or crunch the numbers or whatever your job might be. I get what that's like. I can easily do that. And so I can help people. I can meet them very much where they are and get it, and help them take those same superpowers and apply it to the domain of how they show up for their people and how they can be just brilliant leaders.
I love that. I love that. And so what's one myth about leadership you wish people would stop believing?
I wish people would stop believing that some people just don't, it relates to what I just said. Some people just don't make good leaders. I hear this still all the time. I hear things like, well, they're just not really a people person. I hear people say, well, you just can't teach that stuff. I hear it, and it drives me nuts because if you can't teach that stuff. If we can't learn, if we can't grow, then what in the world are we doing?
Yeah.
One of my former bosses used to say, it's the essence of it, I'll get his quote wrong, but the essence of it was, if I'm not learning, you might as well just like put me in the grave, bury me, right? Like I'm done. So we need to truly see and appreciate and believe in the human capacity to learn and grow, not just up to age 18 or 24, but all the way through our lives.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so a couple of rapid fire questions for you, Carylynn. So here we go. What habit has had the biggest impact on your life?
Hands down, having a morning devotional. And I was late to the game on this. I know
Me
folks
too.
that had great habits early on, but morning devotional. There you
Morning time, just quiet, just with you and God, just taking that time, that minute to, breathe and just hear what he has to say for you.
Yeah. And actually, I know it's rapid fire, but I use an app that has a wonderful sequence. It starts with gratitude, and then it starts with praying for other members of the community. So their prayer requests from that day come up.
Right.
And then asking for prayer, which is also humility and just like, what do I need? And then reading scripture and meditating on that scripture. I love that.
Do you know the name of the app? I'd love to.
Yeah, it's through my church. So it's called Grace. Try Grace.
Try Grace. Okay. Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. Okay. What book changed how you think about leadership?
Chalmers Brothers is a leadership expert, prolific speaker. Wrote a book you wouldn't think is a leadership book. It's called Language and the Pursuit of Happiness. Best-selling book, translated into so many languages. Language and the Pursuit of Happiness.
Okay.
And so it's all about how, as leaders, we are paid to have effective conversations and all the things that we do through our interactions with people.
I love that. And then what's one piece of advice you give almost every client?
It's ironically, it's that when you get feedback, it says just as much or more about the person giving it to you as it does about you. And just to expand on that, that doesn't mean not to take it seriously. It means to take that feedback and learn about that other person through it. So if you tell me that I'm too loud, then okay, right? That tells me something about you. And it might mean that if I toned it down a little bit in our conversations, we would have better interaction. So it might make me want to change my behavior. But regardless, it tells me something about you, and it gives me this beautiful opportunity to improve the relationship.
Oh, that's great. So we're coming to a close here. So if someone's listening, feels stuck in their career or leadership journey, what's the first step they should take?
I'd say reach out to other people. Don't stay in it alone. You can start with folks that you already have a relationship with. Think about you say latent network. Like think about the people that you haven't talked to in years, right? Start to call them up. You'd be floored how easily it is to rekindle old relationships. But ultimately, create your own army. Create an army around you that's there to support you and that will, not just pat you on the back and tell you everything's fine and be a cheerleader, but help you think really hard about what you need to do differently and what you need other people to do differently, or what are the boundaries that you want to put in place around you to be successful.
Okay. And where can people connect with you and learn more about your work?
Yeah, so you can learn more about me and pretty much everything I do on my website. It's CarylynNLarson.info, or you can find me on LinkedIn. So Carylynn Larson on LinkedIn.
I love it. I love it. And we'll have all that in the show notes for you. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, that's the best way. So I love it. Thank you again, Carylynn. You were an awesome guest. Your story is amazing. And I wish you and all the blessings and all the good luck you can have.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks for listening to I'm Up, He Sees Me, I'm Down. Follow the show for more conversations on leadership, faith, and resilience. Sponsored by Alamo Tech and Mission Solution Partners.